Thanks for making time on your Tuesday afternoon at the end of Q1 of 2024. I'm so excited to have Andy, Vanessa, Carla here to talk with me about the opportunities in hospitality with a focus on workforce financial well-being. Really appreciate you all taking the time. I've had such great conversations with you all individually. You all have an amazing vibe and in how you're redefining hospitality as a sector. So I thought, what better way to do it than bring you all together and make sure to amplify your voice and make sure that other leaders can also get to chime in with your ideas. So today, that's the agenda, really making sure that we're diving into the area of workforce financial well-being, how that looks like in hospitality workers, and why that represents such an amazing opportunity for businesses that are operating in hospitality. With that, what I would love to do is I would love to start out with quick introductions, and I am going to just go through the list over here, stop sharing for a second so that people, given that people can actually see you. And we will start with Vanessa on my bingo screen or
Do we
game
like
show
do
screen.
the high five? Is that?
That's right.
Hi, everyone. Vanessa Verano here. I looked at the agenda briefly, but I think I'm just supposed to say where I'm from and kind of what got me into the business here.
Yeah.
So I work for the Mac Hike Restaurant Group. We're based out of Houston. I'm the vice president of learning and development. And I've been in the restaurant industry over 25 years. So my parents owned restaurants. I grew up in them. I went to school for restaurants, and I've been working in, around, or supporting them ever since. Very, very passionate about the restaurant industry. I think that, it's something, it's like that Hotel California, right? You can go, but you'll never leave. It's something that gets into your blood with hospitality. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to see and wear a lot of different hats in the industry. And I'm in one of my favorite right now, which is helping to grow others and turn day-to-day restaurant work into a career. So excited to be invited to this panel today.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. Excited to have you here. And we'll go to Andy, who's next up on my screen.
Thank you, Sid. My name is Andy Hooper. I'm the CEO and a founding partner for Heart House, which is a quick service restaurant chain serving burgers and chicken sandwiches and shakes, fries, tots, all the good stuff. It just so happens that that food is also made entirely from plants and is 100% vegan. I'm based in Washington, D.C. The restaurants are in Los Angeles County. I too, like Vanessa, have been in this industry now for about 25 years. And I started as a dishwasher in a full service restaurant back at the beginning of my career, and spent a bunch of my time in various leadership roles in the human resources function on my way to now being in the CEO and co-founder role here with Heart House. So honestly, one of the things that excites me most about this industry, and grateful for those of you that chose to spend some of your Tuesday afternoon with us today, is how much opportunity remains to really create excellent jobs. There's just so far to go in this restaurant industry, which I'll talk a bit about more later. But to me, that's really exciting because, that means that there's space for creativity and innovation. I'm excited about some of the things that this group of panelists is working on in their respective businesses to drive that home. So thanks for having me, Sid, and Vanessa and Carla. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Andy. And Carla.
Hi, thank you, Sid, and hi, everyone. I'm Carla Hallman. I took a circuitous route into hospitality. I worked in fast food. I was a server at Dairy Queen before I joined the military. Right out of high school, I was a military intelligence analyst turned HR professional. I kind of stumbled into my role here at Farmington, but what drew me was the hospitality. And what I loved was my task from my team was to create that hospitality experience for the employees, which I think is what HR does when it comes to training and financial well-being and ensuring that they have that kind of training. So I've talked a lot with Sid on that goal for me when it comes to training and creating that connection between your first job to being CEO, which is kind of the goal, I guess. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carla. And to everyone who I may not have met, very nice to meet you. I'm Sid Pila. I'm the founder and CEO of Sunny Day Fund. As I like to joke, I'm mission delusional about building workforce financial well-being, of course, in hospitality, as well as across other sectors, including healthcare, nonprofit. And, I also, much like most workers here in the US, had at one point served in hospitality. In my particular case, that included a hotel company in Bakersfield, California. That was a really, really interesting and fun experience. I learned a lot during that time, and also as a bartender for a little bit of time as well in Charlottesville. So don't ask me to make all the drinks. I just know a few really, really well. So, when I think about hospitality and what gets me so excited is I kind of go back to my roots, right? Born and raised in Hyderabad, India. When we say hello to someone, we ask them if they ate already, right? And like that's our way of greeting people. It's like, did you eat? If not, we're gonna feed you. So for in my world, I think that hospitality is something that is built into each and every single human being as a value. But also, as Andy said, it represents a tremendous opportunity for folks that are innovating in the industry, either on the tech side or on the people side, and of course, building a brand side, which requires both and tech and people, to really thrive. So I'm excited to be here. And so the structure for this conversation, and by the way, I encourage you all to certainly introduce yourselves, those that are attending in the chat. It's live. We want this to be very much a trade of different ideas, and we want it to be interactive. So I will only be your humble guide during this process. With that, I'm going to get some of the boring things out of the way to just nest our conversation. And then from there, we'll turn it over to really the panelists to drive most of the conversation. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And great. So I already introduced myself. The organization that I represent here today is Sunny Day Fund, where our mission is to drive workforce financial well-being, which is financial stability and freedom paired together. And we know that that starts with emergency savings. When we think about hospitality, like in my mind, as I shared, it's a pretty vast industry, right? It includes folks in the hotel sector. So my wife, she works for a Hilton. For example, it includes people in the QSR world. It includes folks that are in the fine dining space, as well as like the groups of workers who may be shift workers inside of hospital systems, senior living organizations. So really hospitality is, as I shared, both a vertical as well as in some cases a horizontal. And when I was talking with employers such as those that have joined today, some of the things that were challenges and opportunities that were coming up, there was like 5 main ones that jumped out at me, and I'll look to you all, Vanessa and Carla, to chime in on this here soon. The first one, and probably the most important one that's impacting margins pretty directly, is retention, right? What's pretty wild to me is that the standard or the typical annualized turnover in this industry is 180%. Like that's okay for some reason. I know that that's a pretty high number in a lot of other industries, and we'll talk about ways to potentially drive that later on. Of course, we can't talk about this space without talking about it from a wage perspective as well. It does overwhelmingly represent hourly workers, and depends on geography, but the typical wages that we've seen after analyzing over 120 different hospitality companies ourselves, in addition to over 1,000 companies more broadly that we've constructed plan designs for, is that typically the wages are around $15 per hour. It can vary by geography as well as state laws, which we'll talk about in a second. The other piece in this is that there is from an employee perspective, a large desire around shift flexibility, but also reliability. It's not just about having the flexibility about when to work. It's about making sure that I'm getting enough income from the times that I'm working on a weekly basis so that at the end of the day, I'm meeting my most immediate, almost like Maslowian needs of finance. Of course, we have something that I'm sure is a lively debate for many of you, and I'm sure that some of the folks that registered may not have joined because they may be spending some time on this upcoming law, which is and Andy, I know that this certainly impacts you all, though you're ahead of the game here, is the state laws changing, like AB 1228, which will require specifically in the fast food casual space in California to have minimum wages of $20 with very, very specific exemptions. So that's another challenge, right? It's not just that we have to have people, it's that what the laws that apply to how we employ those people are constantly changing and need to be on top of that from a compliance perspective. And last, and certainly not least, Carla, you were alluding to this on your side, is that there's new technology in the space. Oh, we're continuously innovating, whether that is about how we view menus or what the guest experience looks like, or something that's back of house in terms of automating some of the operations or some of the cooking elements or some of the prep work, or whether it's like the software technology that's encompassing. The thing is, there's a lot of new technology that is entering this space and it's already made its mark. And of course, what that means from a people perspective is that learning and development have never been more relevant. So I'm going to pause here for a second and have you all kind of just reflect on some of these challenges. Maybe I'll if you don't have anyone is coming off mute, I'm happy to cold call as well.
I'm happy to talk about, some of the challenges. I think when back in the day, in the hospitality industry, you had people lined out the door wanting to work with you because we were the only people who offered flexibility. You had the ability to come in without a lot of experience. If you were front of house, you got your money the same day. English optional a lot of times in the back of house. We were a really easy way for people to come in, and people treated us like a stopping point on the way, as a side hustle. Single moms, like we had this massive area of opportunity in recent years. That has eroded because people are just eating our lunch with flexible schedules, with the ability to get your pay, which I know, of course, we're going to talk about, same day, with the ability to come in. You don't have to go to terrible, dingy call centers anymore. You can be a call center employee from your apartment, from your home. And I think that, when you talk about that turnover, it used to be 100% turnover was pretty good. We can't afford 100% turnover now with the way that the market has contracted for labor, never mind the 180 that it is. And I think that's QSR. And so the challenges are absolutely real. And, it's exciting to be talking with a group and figuring out, how do we kind of position our whole industry, not just competitively, how do I position me against you, but our industry in creating career as a part of hospitality, as opposed to, our old mantra of stopping point or side hustle.
Yeah, I think what I would add to that, Vanessa, is how large the challenge is.
Yeah.
Hospitality as a broad sector employs more than 10% of America. And so there's also this, I think, intrinsic responsibility that we have as an industry to get that right, and not just to be competitive and to regain some of the excellence that made the industry such an attractive stopping point in people's careers early on. There's also a bit like of a moral obligation to figure it out because it's such a huge chunk of America. And, so goes America, as goes 10% of America's workforce. And I believe that we all as participating members of society had a front row seat for the significance and essential nature of this work over the last few years. We called people essential workers in this space. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders in the space to treat them as such and to give them the first fruits of our curiosity rather than the leftovers.
I think it's a great point. And also to add, I think there's a misconception, especially when you talk about technology and how essential that they are, and that they have to be there, they have to be present in that space. That it's not just an easy thing. I think a lot of people thought they could just show up, you know, kind of phone it in a way, where there's so much talent in this space that I think there's a lot there when you think about how much it takes to kind of craft the amazing things that they do with the learning, the development, the technology, especially when it comes to the culinary in the back of house, the high level of hospitality that I think America and the world is starting to expect. I think there's a lot that goes into that kind of training that is it's a harder thing to attract now as well.
Yeah, certainly well said. I think the challenges are certainly real, but so is the opportunity. I think that one of the pieces that to frame the conversation more on the financial side is from an individual perspective, the people that are employed in the sector. You know, we know even before we start slicing into hospitality across the board, we know that 57% of Americans have less than $1,000 saved. We know that most people who are offered a 401k benefit in this specific industry are not taking advantage of that benefit fully because they're much more focused on their more immediate financial goals that are in front of them. And we know that there's other opportunities that are coming down the pipe, like the SAVE program that we'll talk about in a minute. And I think that with kind of that in mind and realizing that the opportunity to set the tone for almost every other industry really starts with the industry that literally feeds us. I want to go to you, Andy, and you have this pretty mind-blowing talk called Beyond the Straw. I'd love for you to kind of share that, like, well, why did you come up with that talk in the first place? And then what are some of the takeaways from that talk that you can share with us?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Beyond the Straw is really meant to be symbolic of where sometimes I feel a lot of the efforts of business leaders are a bit more performative than they are substantial. And it really speaks to the idea that, you know, for those of you that have been in and around this industry, you know that there was a point in time where the plastic straw became public enemy number one. And, you know, there were all sorts of stats. You know, 9% of plastic is recycled, and it's been that way since 2012. You know, there's 9 million tons of plastic pollution flowing into the ocean. A lot of these stats seem like big and overwhelming, and they are. But you know, the industry decided, or some activists decided, to go after plastic straws specifically. And my opinion is that that's more about moral license, which is, you know, a concept of like allowing companies and their customers to feel like they've done their part. And so by banning plastic straws, there was this kind of collective patting on the back of like, okay, well, we just did something big and it's going to make a big difference. And to me, it represents sort of everything that is wrong with problem solving and how much opportunity there is in the restaurant space. Because if you ask the average consumer, they actually like plastic straws a lot better than paper straws. For those of you that like paper straws, I'm going to say you're lying because they're worse. They're just hands down worse. And there are thousands of other ways to make exponentially greater impact on the environment from a sustainability perspective that don't relate to plastic straws. But one of the big reasons why they became so vilified is there was a video on YouTube of a sea turtle that, you know, had plastic stuck in its nose, and it became this visual emblem for how problematic this plastic waste sort of problem and challenge was. And it became a very easy way for businesses and consumers to get that moral license from being able to sort of say that they had done something about it. And my talk around Beyond the Straw that I've given a few times is really a question of, like, what if we had the same level of fanatic focus against the challenge of retention in the restaurant industry? What if we sort of took the idea that, in the same way that plastic straws ended up someplace we didn't want them to, what if we had the same level of intentionality around restaurant employees ending up where we didn't want them to? And this idea that there's this massive human capital waste problem that exists in the hospitality space today. Not that we are wasting these individuals on a personal level, but we're just churning through their experiences in a way that isn't capturing the best of who they are. It isn't able to help them bring the best of who they are to work. And it's preposterous to think about, like, running a business in any other sector where you would accept as table stakes that your entire team would turn over within the first 6 months that you were there. Like, nobody working on this call would stay at a job where their entire peer group turned over every 4 to 6 months. Yet that's what we effectively were asking people in the hospitality space to do. And so, from my perspective, it just represents this very candidly, like, obvious business challenge for professionals, particularly HR professionals, and as business partners to the financial function and to the operating function and to the executive functions of the business, to take a stand. And so, see, that's where that comes from. The Beyond the Straw is really like thinking beyond the straw, beyond the easy, obvious, performative, moral licensing decision you can make as a business leader, and treating sustainability as something that should start with the sustainability of the employment experience. And if instead of a tree that we were trying to save to grow up one day to become strong and to provide shelter and everything else, what if it was a human? And, you know, and I think one of the things we'll talk about today and why this is so important is that solving challenges around financial precarity in the workplace become kind of the foundation of creating a scenario where that employment experience can be sustainable. Because contrary to people's best efforts to separate their personal and their professional life, and everybody who's ever worked back a house at a restaurant has been part of some conversation with a manager telling an employee to leave their problems at home for the day, that's not possible, because we all bring the same head and the same heart wherever we go. And so those things are inextricably linked. And so Beyond the Straw is really about kind of a mindset reshift that says, let's not procrastinate on this anymore just because it's hard. Let's go out and do the hard thing to make it work.
Andy, I think that's such a powerful message. You know, I remember thinking about what you're saying back then when I first heard it, when I basically got goosebumps, because, you know, if we are saying that plastic straws are not disposable, then why the heck are we treating people as disposable? Like, we can't do that. I remember you mentioning, like, you had a unit that you were running in a 10,000 person town. When you were going through all the people in that 10,000 person town in a matter of a couple of, you know, weeks or months, that's not a sustainable unit that you can operate in that location. So you mentioned financial precarity. Let's go there. You know, of course, like, not just like why it's so important, but you're doing some things about it at Hard House. I would love for you to dive in deeper, because I know that emergency savings is only a part of the mix. I would love for you to kind of share your theory of change around financial well-being and how that's working for you.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that you do when you first sort of solve the kind of persistent nagging financial stress over the top of someone is that you open up a level of thinking that they don't normally have access to as a human being. If you just think about your own life, being under the weight of that limits your own creativity, your own gratitude, all the kinds of feelings that inspire the level of problem solving that you actually want from somebody in hospitality, right? Like you want somebody to the best, the team at Taco Bell and David Novak said this all the time, like the guest experience is never going to exceed the employee experience, right? And it's like, so the best thing you can hope for is that your folks show up to work and give everything that they have to the customer. That is literally, like, from a mathematical perspective, the best thing you can hope for as a business owner in the space. And so the question is, how do you unlock more of that? It's not just about emergency savings, but it's about creating the opportunity for that additional income to be savings. And so, one of the other things we're doing at Heart House is we have a partner that is involved in a really innovative approach to student loan debt restructuring and forgiveness. So you might imagine that if you're able to free up $100 or $150 of post-tax cash flow for an hourly worker in your restaurant, the first thing that you can then do is be there to meet them when that $150 makes it to their bank account with other ways to create additional leverage. An emergency savings account being one of them, an opportunity to make a direct investment into a retirement account being one of them, an opportunity to purchase things that are necessities and of interest to somebody at a discount based on group negotiated discounts being another one of them. So as part of that same talk, I shared kind of what I call my culture stack, which is it's sort of an hourly rate on pay and then all of these associated benefits. And I think what's really interesting about that is when we talk about building financial wellness in teams or doing financial literacy work, it's not just enough to like teach somebody about literacy. In fact, like I would argue that most low wage workers are significantly more literate with their finances than most middle income workers, because they're the ones that have figured out the creative ways to remit payments to their family in El Salvador and stretch money over here and make a deal on this side of things and pool together resources for transportation needs. And so, we've looked to our frontline staff for the vast majority of the creative solutions that we have. And that's what's led to the sort of compounded benefit of things like the emergency savings account.
And
Fantastic.
I think,
yeah, please.
oh, sorry. I think you're really on track. It's modernizing what a total rewards benefit looks like when you're thinking of what HR. I think back in the day, we thought total rewards was a 401k, your healthcare. It really is diversifying that really in the small and the long term. And also it's thinking about your person holistically. It's more than an EAP. When something is going wrong, it's ensuring that you have all of those things. I love your idea of beyond the straw. When I think about how because we work in for a lot of clubs, a lot of people don't know they're actually 501c7s, member-owned organizations are internally run. So it's much more relationship based. I'd say a lot of times when you're working in quick service or fast casual, it's transactional, or even a restaurant. They come in, they get a meal, they may meet you once, they may meet you a couple of times if they become a regular, but here, those people every day. You see those people every day. So if you have an off day, that person knows you're having an off day. So it's a different conversation when your server's having an off day and they look at you and they go, what's going on at home? You're having a different relationship building. So it's creating that full holistic hospitality for the employee, right? You're giving that same level of service to your person that comes into work for you as they are giving out to the world. So I love that idea of beyond the straw.
Carla, that's a great segue to a question that I had for you. Like we just learned from Andy about like his approach to financial well-being and the fruits that has borne for them. For you at Farmington and more broadly speaking, how's that journey been? Like um, how has that evolved? Whether it's at the country club or more broadly in your modernization of tour rewards, as what are the must-haves, the new must-haves, if you will?
Well, for us, what I loved the idea of, well, for one, I think as HR professionals, we are all like slightly mini employment lawyers, and we're and retirement, like service providers. We all have to keep our ears to the ground to what's happening up there next to Andy at the Capitol. So knowing that emergency savings and secure 2.0 was around the corner, it was helpful to know kind of what people were thinking about. So thinking about emergency savings and that idea, I love the idea of having something that didn't have uh, such a negative impact on long term, especially for a lot of people when you're thinking about if you're making $15 an hour and that is not going to carry you into um, into a long term or even an annual basis in our area. I believe the level of like the level of poverty for our area, I think, is a little bit over 38,000 a year, which is around that $15 an hour. We have to be really cognizant of what our employee value proposition is when it comes to both pay, ensuring that they have the benefits that they need, and ensuring that they have all the support that they need. So we have not only an emergency savings plan, we have programs to ensure that they can get to college if that is what they want to do, or their families, their dependents, their grandchildren, ensuring that they have a holistic mental and physical wellness, as well as setting them up for long-term financial stability and getting them into the programs that they want to be in. If it's home building, if it's looking to be a better saver, if it's wanting to move or grow or even stay where they are. I think we have a different element for us. My retention rate is actually pretty low. We actually just celebrated an employee who has been here 40 years last week. Was called Ray Day. He had 40. He celebrated his 40th year. So I have a different issue. So I do really much think about how we ensure that they're taken care of in their entire time that they're here at our club.
Fantastic. One more question, and then I'd love to bring you into the conversation here, Vanessa. So, Carly, I remember there's an amazing story that you have of someone who, basically what you just said. You're planting a lot of different seeds, right? Of all the different benefits, or a lot of different opportunities that you're giving to your employees to essentially uh, improve their overall employment experience, but also their personal life. And there was one person who ended up that I had a great chance to interact with, who ended up using our program as not just a way to get started, but also use that as a vehicle to start saving up for retirement as well. That to me was a moment that just kind of blew my mind for a second, because everyone in the old days, it seemed like retirement is a savings that, retirement savings is the only benefit that is offered. And if you can do it, you do it, or maybe you're automatically enrolled into it. But for something like our program to serve as a vehicle into that, alongside like the student related benefits, I thought was really interesting to me. So I know I basically shared that story on your behalf here, but would love for you to add in your comment there.
What I thought was great about that story from my employee was they started putting in and then didn't think about it, and then the quarterly bonus hit, and they were like, "Oh, I get more money from this. I get a bonus," and then it kind of ramped it up, and then they're like, "Well, what other bonuses do I get?" And it was actually really great. We have a couple of dining outlets here, and that employee moved from one dining outlet to the other, and then our Sunny D Fund involvement spiked in that other unit, because they kind of took the story, like our word of mouth kind of traveled into that other dining outlet, and it kind of spiked in that one department. And I was like, I know what I can see. I was like, I'm gonna move her over here for a couple of weeks. I'm gonna move her over. But I think that was really great because looking at the savings from Sunny Day Fund and that how that high yield savings account was just bringing in more money than a regular savings account, or even at the time, I think the money market. She was able to save for her home and then realized that she could save more for her 401k. And it really just helped encourage her to get that kind of going. And then she got some of the like teenagers involved and just started getting them thinking about it. I think getting some of the younger people, I think a lot of times when you think about hospitality, I know both Vanessa and Andy, you both did exactly what senior people in hospitality do. All of my senior leaders do it. You talk about your first job. You were a dishwasher. You started at your parents' restaurant. I was a lifeguard. You think about that thing, that summer that you loved, dishwashing in the back of the house. You think about helping your mom, running tables, that fun night. That is what creates that like that love, that almost like that desire for the hospitality industry, that smile you see on someone's face, that teamwork, that camaraderie. That's the bug that bit you. And then 25 years later, you're here, and so creating that love and that bite also for saving, I think, is a really great connection point that you can make while we're both here at that hospitality space.
That's a fantastic segue to you, Vanessa, because ultimately, on the learning and development side, you represent a good chunk of that journey. How do you create that love for the different types of programs? I mean, we learn from Andy that these types of programs are great. We learn about different stories with Carla, but how do you instill that opportunity as people are starting with you?
Yeah, I'm just going to steal Carla's person. That's how I'm going to do it.
I was
I
just
think
in
it's
Houston 2 days ago. You cannot have her.
I think that, again, I've worn lots of hats in this industry, and nothing works better than when you have a good product that works for good people and then getting the word out there on it by magnifying their voices and not your own. We haven't started an emergency savings fund yet, but I have at 2 previous companies rolled out earned wage access. Earned wage access, the daily pays of the world. We were really excited about it, and we saw some great results. Getting folks, if you don't have it yet, this is, as I would consider, kind of a table stakes out there, but keeping people from having to go to predatory payday loans, being able to access their savings. As I mentioned before, the restaurant industry was essentially founded on, at least our front of house was able to access their money same day. And now as more and more businesses start shifting to cashless, those benefits that were core to our system kind of eroded. And so making sure that people have access, whether it's tip cards, if you're talking tips, earned wage access. And when we rolled it out, it was fantastic because it was funny. The company at the time, they said, "Hey, what are your goals? What are your ROI?" And I was really bullish on, please don't bring that up in front of my executive team. I don't want to talk about ROI with this. As Andy mentioned, there's a moral obligation here. And especially with most earned wage, it costs you nothing. So let's not talk ROI on this because we're really not investing anything. But what we saw became addicting. It gave that desire, Carla, because you found that people were able to be proud of the fact that they didn't have to ask a parent or a friend for money. They didn't have to do payday loans. They didn't have to call off a shift. We saw gamification through people saying, I want to pick up a shift so that I can go to a concert tomorrow night. So we saw, less call offs, more people jumping in. We said, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But it really isn't fixing the core of the problem, which is that, people, because once they start doing those loans, there's a percentage of folks that get themselves into some bad habits. While we did see an increase in retention from people using earned wage access, that's not the end all be all to someone being set up financially well enough for us to essentially grow them through our company. We have some really great programs in place. So outside of financial wellness, one of our biggest brands, we're a franchisee of First Watch Daytime Cafe. And we can offer people really, really great work-life balance in our industry because no nights ever. And we're able to bring people in. I remember when I interviewed at this company, our COO's name's Dan Amfinson. He's fantastic. He was so proud at the interview. He goes, "I just need to stop you for a second. I'm on cloud 9 right now." The general manager at the restaurant that I was interviewing at had pulled him aside and had told him that he was expecting his first kid. And he goes, "And I hired him, as a dishwasher. And here he is. He's a successful general manager. He has like the highest profitability out of anyone." He goes, "And he chose to share that with me. And he hasn't even told the staff yet. And he hasn't, he was just so excited." And it was about, helping people to become, grown-ups and to start families and to have a life. And it started as just a job for him. So I think that, we have a bunch of those stories at our company. 70% of our leadership, 75% of our leadership positions were filled with internal employees last year. We have pipelines, we have programs to prepare them from a job standpoint. We give them leadership skills that they're going to need to go from coaching people one-to-one as a trainer to coaching one-to-many as a manager. We have experiences where they get to participate in new restaurant openings. We have all of these systems set up to make them a good employee. I love the idea of setting up what are those systems to make them great at life, so that they can, enjoy being an employee with us. And I think that, as Carla mentioned before, modernizing the total rewards package is necessary, because it just, people look at things differently now, and we have to meet folks where they are and help them to achieve what they're looking to achieve. Because it is just so easy to say, "You know what, screw this, I'm going to go mine Bitcoin." Or so I think that, I love the idea when we first started earned wage access, it was a stickiness. People would think twice to leave you because you had that benefit and somebody else didn't. And I think that, companies waiting to jump on emergency savings are going to miss out, because I think that is our newest, opportunity that we have, to be competitive, but also to meet folks where they are and to help them to build a life with us, and, in our industry, in our restaurants. I see a question about tip cards. Tip cards are, so if you start, if you're a restaurant and instead of paying out tips each day, if you make the decision to put them onto people's paychecks, there's a bunch of different companies out there that will work with you where you can either direct deposit their tips into their accounts each day, or you can work with them and it'll be a special setup card and account where those tips can go. But again, it's so that they don't lose out on access on them, as opposed to forcing someone to wait a week or 2 weeks to collect tips in the front of house.
Thank you, Vanessa, for taking that question, and also that amazing perspective. And I think that it is really interesting, right? Because I feel like there's been an ebb and flow sorts in the broader world of labor. You kind of went from, we are working with one or two, maybe two employers for all of our lives, to now, or maybe more accurately, a couple years back, constantly thinking about, like, I'm going to be staying at a job for no more than like a single year, and that's it amount, to now a little bit of a pullback to saying, like, well, what does it mean for me to stick with an employer and grow through the internal pipeline? Because that seems like a great way for me to build a career. So almost a return to career as we're seeing it. So it's interesting to hear that from a hospitality perspective. Hopefully, yes, for sure. So, Andy, I want to return back to you. By the way, Carla and Andy, feel free to, if there's anything in response to what Vanessa said, please feel free to hop in. I'll just pause here for a second. Okay, cool. In amazing agreement. I want to come back to you. So, you mentioned this earlier with the SAVE plan, and full disclosure, I'm using you as a way for me to talk about this because I think this is just such a great opportunity, specifically in the hospitality space. And I want our current attendees and listeners to have a better appreciation of what this the plan actually does. But to the extent that you can talk about it, could share a little bit more about why you chose to specifically introduce the student loan provider that you did, and more broadly, the SAVE plan and what that does, what that unlocks for your frontline population.
Sure. Yeah. So interestingly, I didn't tell you this, Sid, but I will be at the White House tomorrow for the SAVE plan, rollout conversation.
And I'll see you there.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. So yeah, I mean, the SAVE plan is, and this sort of SAVE day of action coming this week is coming as a result of trying to bring some additional light and understanding to the SAVE Act and what it does for unlocking a bunch of different opportunity to restructure or even forgive student loan debts. I think that one of the things that's really interesting about this plan and about its contribution to financial precarity generally is that there are actually a lot more people in the restaurant and hospitality space with student loan debt than we might assume. So there's a gigantic sum of student loan debt that exists in the United States, but with hospitality workers representing 10% of the American workforce, you might imagine that even if the percentage is lower than other industries, it's still pretty meaningful. And I think the last stat that I saw said that 20% of employees in the hospitality space have some sort of student loan debt. For those of you like me who have been in this industry for a long time, you might remember from, post Great Financial Crisis, this brief period in time where we got, as HR leaders, it through our mind that we should now start requiring degrees for managers of restaurants, which may have been one of those things that was the downfall, Vanessa, of the golden years of hospitality being such an attractive space, because it was really just a way to make candidate flow more manageable during a time when there were so many people looking for work. It wasn't actually that magically in 2009 it became necessary to have a 4-year degree to successfully manage a restaurant. And so what you also end up with in the restaurant space is this weird conundrum where you've got folks who went back to school using a tuition reimbursement program provided by their employer, but it took them 7 years. They couldn't quite get a degree. The tuition reimbursement program was offsetting a portion of it, but not all of it. And now you've got this human being who's in the restaurant space with debt, but no degree, no need for the degree based on their professional path now. And this weird pocket now of a situation where their income might not really help them repay it. And they're in this kind of precipitous cycle over time of continuing to siphon off cash to pay for student loan debt. And so the SAVE Act does some things that introduce some income-based repayment options that are specifically relevant to this industry and that could, for your folks, lower their payments materially. Unfortunately, it's complicated because it's government legislation. And so there are providers in this space. Shout out to my partners at Savvy, a DC-based organization that does this, SAVI, for those of you that are interested. They're effectively like TurboTax for the tax system. You work with them, their team understands how to navigate each of these different repayment programs and finds you the very best one based on your individual needs. And voila, it lowers your financial payment on average to the tune of about $150 per month. And so if you're on the phone now or on the Zoom now and you've got hourly workers making $15 to $20 an hour, lowering something by $150 post-tax per month is like giving somebody, another like 30 hours of work, but not paying them for it. And there are very few things that we can do as employers that like give our employees $150 post-tax raise that don't cost us more than that on a pre-tax basis as the employer. So kind of a no-brainer. And so, this is an important piece of legislation, really important for restaurants to know about it. The irony is that workers in the restaurant space are probably the least likely to know about it organically based upon where they get their news. And so it's our job as leaders to make sure that we're raising awareness and hopefully partnering with folks who can make that easier.
Absolutely. What a great summary, Andy. Thank you for sharing that. And that's exactly why we're communicating with all of the savers that are on Sunny Day Fund, including providers such as Savvy. So that's absolutely fantastic. I shared earlier in the chat a link to the program itself. It gives you a very helpful chart and to understand, hey, I am an employee that may be earning annualized wages of $50,000 with a family of 3. What is my new monthly payment? It is now $0. So it gives you an idea of exactly what to do. And really what's happening here is that the interest rate that would be charged on the student loans is effectively being subsidized in this case. So as a result, those loans are really not growing and cascading into a bigger snowball than we can manage. It's really something that's being addressed right here and right now. So it's a great program that I would, at a minimum, I want you to be aware of for all your new employees. So I know we're coming up at the end of the hour. So I'm gonna start shifting towards any questions that, look, I know we have answered one question, but if there's any questions from the audience, feel free to type it into chat or drop it into Q&A. Otherwise, I have just one last question for everyone here, but let me just pause to see if there's any questions that'll come in. All right. Not seeing any that come in yet. Maybe there will be one, and you all will just who is talking that time. You're just gonna have to answer it, okay? So we obviously love ending on a bright note at Sunny Day Fund. It's literally in our name. We like to think about the world in a positive way. So what is one thing that you're looking forward to, Vanessa, Carla, Andy, either, in your respective organization, in this industry, or in your own personal life this year? What's something that you're looking forward to celebrating? I'm going to go in reverse order to earlier, so we'll go with Vanessa.
I am looking forward to, so as I mentioned, we put a lot of development programs together. We started last year really focusing on hourly team members, and it got such a great response that we got called up for more. So this year we're putting together programs and we're getting ready to launch, helping a manager get ready to jump into that GM role. And we do lots of fun things with it. So we get everybody together, we give them little fidget toys to play with. We have, fun music going. We do ridiculous games and activities. And it's been great to be able to see these people come through the programs and see them on their growth, and be proud to show up at them. So I'm looking forward to that kind of warm, fuzzy moment when we kick that off this year.
I love that. When we do in-person sessions, we bring Capri Suns and Sunny D's because, we're all children.
Love it.
And okay, let's go to Carla next.
Last year, we asked the team what word in their fellow teammate do they think success looks like. And we did like a lot of brainstorming sessions, and we came up with a word, and we're launching that as our Team Farmington project this year. I won't tell you what it is because they don't know what it is yet, but we're launching it this summer. I'm really excited about that.
I am so excited about that too. And I'm now already thinking about how we can embed that in to our program as well. Okay, Andy.
One of the things that has me most excited may not sound like it should on the surface, but for a long time, I think the structural pressures on running a restaurant or a restaurant company correctly have been pretty ingrained. And the movement that we make on things is a bit more incremental than revolutionary because, people talk about it being a lower margin business. I mean, certainly running a restaurant, and a great restaurant, might mean running, 20% EBITDA at the four-wall level. Whereas like building a great piece of software might mean 60 or 80% EBITDA at the product level. And so, I'm excited about what AI does to make jobs better for hospitality workers. There's a lot of talk about it replacing hospitality jobs, but I'm kind of in Carla's camp. Like, I don't think that's going to happen because this is a human capital business and always will be. But I'm excited about seeing it solve real pain points for those humans and fix things that they want fixed. The average person doesn't want something that automatically drops chips in a fryer for them and like robotically lifts them out and spins them around. They want something that makes counting inventory easier, or they want something that makes saving money easier. And so I'm really excited about what kind of leverage this next phase of development fueled by AI can bring that turns restaurant jobs and hospitality jobs into truly great jobs again. And allows us to sell the aspects of this work that were so kind of fundamental in making it a really attractive place for people to work in the first place.
Amazing, Andy. I really dig that. It's from my perspective on the AI side, what it has unlocked, what the LLM models have unlocked in order for us to be able to use different translation engines, different ways to reach the same community. I know, for example, at Farmington, we have a very diverse population, but being able to meet their needs with the device that's in front of them, it's something that is top of mind for us. So I certainly agree about not just our ability to include more people, but also to make their experience revolutionarily better, not incrementally better. And I think that that's fantastic. I'll share one last thing from my side. I'm really excited about, of course, continue on with your organizations or maybe working with new ones as well. I think we are seeing a step function change within our own organization that will include some amazing new products, not just focused on savings, but making the whole experience even better from leveraging different AI capabilities as well as adding new financial capabilities as well. So I can't wait to see your reaction to all those things when they go live later this year. But we'll have to all get back together and do this again next year to report out on how that has happened. So everyone that has joined, and especially to our panelists, thank you so much for taking your Tuesday afternoon with us. As we like to joke here, wish you all a very sunny day, and join me in thanking the panelists. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you,
Thanks so
Andy and
much.
Carla.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks so much.